All right. Why don't we get started here? So, what is customer experience? Just a quick definition. Tell me which of these is correct. This is a little competitive, so hopefully, get the juices going right before lunch. Yeah, once you answer, it's over. A couple more answers. Let's give it 5 more seconds, and we'll move forward. So who's the leader? Miranda? Where's Miranda? She sits in the front of the class. You know she's going to be good at this. All right, let's go to the next question. If I can. Why does the customer experience matter? It affects revenue. It directly impacts customer retention. It can be a competitive advantage. It can lead to operational efficiency. Give you about 10 more seconds to answer. Now, if you don't know, you get points for a correct answer. You get more points if you answer quicker. Oh, Miranda's still sitting at the top of the board. Yeah, it's all of the above. Now, these are going to get a little harder. What percentage of brands believe CX is a key differentiator? This is globally. %. We have a change in the leaderboard. Miranda, we dropped down to 3rd. Sorry. Next question. What percentage of companies stated they provide excellent customer experience? I probably sit in that. I always say my company does. And I'm sure a lot of people in the room think, yeah, my company's great at it. We work really hard at it. 87% believe they provide great customer experience. Now, on the flip side, what percentage of customers agreed that customers did an excellent job in their customer experience? And all of you are customers of something, so I wonder where you'd sit on that. Yeah. 11%. That's a pretty big gap. And guess what? When that's presented to leadership again, what percentage of brands do not consider this a big gap? Yeah, 72% don't think it's significant. I mean, I would venture a guess that I think that's pretty significant in terms of a gap. So, Bri, congratulations. I don't know who it is. If you want to raise your hand, you feel free to and do a little brag session. I guess not. So, with those numbers in mind, when we start talking about the ROI, we talk about a lot of things that make up the customer experience. And I know these are the 5 Ps of marketing, and they really apply to that, but they really apply to so much more. If you think about your organization, and CX being, that competitive edge, as we just saw there in that quiz, when you think about the 5 Ps of marketing, and then you apply it to your customer experience, which of these 5 is the most challenging? What do you think? I mean, quick show of hands. Product. Who thinks it's product that's the most challenging to control? Price? Placement? People. How about people? Yeah. They are the most unpredictable. Those include our customers, our employees, and ourselves. And that is the one place that if you can really help refine that message to your employees, if you can help refine that message to your customers and bring that experience to them, that is the unbeatable advantage. So really what we're here today to talk about is the economics in customer experience. Now, there's a lot of numbers that you can equate to customer experience. I see you taking pictures. I'll give you we'll give you a QR code. You can give us your email address. We'll send it off to you. So you don't even have to worry about it. Really, these are the three easiest, in my opinion. You're trying to increase revenue. I mean, it's been proven over and over again. I'll show you a chart. Customers that are delighted with their service are going to spend more. You also have the opportunity for upsell, cross-sell, referrals. Then there's improved retention. If you want to keep your revenue, retention is everything. It's huge. Because if you start, say if you have $10 million in business and you lose $1 million in churn in a given year, then you have to get another $1 million just to get back to where you were. And if you want to grow just by 10%, you need $2 million in replacement revenue just to get growth for 10% for the year. So if you kept that $10 million, then you only have to get $1 million in growth to grow for 10% for the year. And then there's the lower cost of service. I really come from an operations background. So this always seems to me, I mean, if you have fewer customer complaints, you don't have to staff as many people in a contact center. And I don't know if any of you read that board downstairs. There's like how do you do this? And someone actually wrote the question, how do you eliminate all of your contact center agents to become AI agents instead? And someone just wrote below it, no. So that was great. Yeah, we don't want to completely get rid of service, but if you can reduce those number of calls that come in, if your customers become experts in working with your product, you don't have to maintain and manage that as much. There are others, like positive word of mouth. Those can be sometimes harder to tie back because there's so many more variables that go into that. When you're talking about word of mouth, there's things such as need, location. I can tell you, there is a fast food restaurant called Fazoli's. It's Italian fast food. They have the most amazing breadsticks, and they're pretty much considered some of the best breadsticks out there, especially for a fast food restaurant. And no matter how much I'm going to tell you about it, how many of you are going to become loyal customers? 0. Because they have 5 locations in the Western U.S. You're probably not going to come across them on your day-to-day dinner runs or anything like that. So there are some that become complicated to make sure that you have a way to tie in. You can ask that question, how many people are you going to refer us to? And they could say 1,000. But the computation really only makes sense if that individual, one of those 1,000 individuals, actually has a need, first of all, and then goes on. So when you start talking about these equations, they can get complicated. And then so when you're trying to pitch the proposal, that's really where you have to decide, do I really want to get complicated? I made a reference yesterday to the most advanced analytical techniques that you could have out there. And if you bring that to your CEO, you'll probably be laughed out of the room. Now, this is the service profit chain. It's an older model. I wanted to bring it in. In sales, you have this elevator pitch, and that's what you have to get when you're talking to executive management, when you're talking to the CEO. This is not an elevator pitch. Well, it is a little more representative of how you quantify that dynamic between customer experience, employee experience, sales, retention, and everything else as it goes towards revenue and profit. The reality is, if you have 5 minutes to explain that you want to invest, say, 5 million Rand in a customer experience department or a technology, they're going to ask, what's in it for me? And I come from operations. I'm action-oriented. But I know the CEO doesn't care what actions I'm going to take. CEO is not going to care that, hey, I'm going to be able to get the front line to do these 3 actions on a daily basis, and they'll know exactly what they have to do. hey, we're going to know what our NPS score is. Oh, that's great. So how much is this going to cost me and how much are we going to get back for it? That's what's critical for success. But, to justify that spend, you have a quick 5 minutes to do it usually. I've never been in a room where I had much more than that to justify my spend on anything, and I talk to the CEO on a daily basis. One way to do it is sort of think about the cost of churn, and this is really simple because you just need 3 data points. And if you think about this, these 3 questions, all you have to do is say, how many customers do you have? What's their average value? Hopefully you know what your revenue is, how many customers you have, and then what's your churn rate. So if you take a company that has 10,000 customers and their value is $1,000 per year, and let's just suppose you have a 10% annual churn rate, just easy numbers to work with. If you just follow that flow, you're going to be at $9 million the next year. But if you reduce churn, just that churn rate, if churn is reduced by 1%, and you now have 9% churn instead of 10% churn, instead of $9 million the following year, you have $9.1 million the following year. And right there, you have that quantification of what one customer's churn represents. It's a very simple example, but when you're looking, there are so many more ways to retain customers, increase their spend, and reduce their costs, all just by taking action within your own organization now. Rather than trying to go out and get more customers, there's some horrible talking points that I've always heard that, it's 5 times more, 10 times more to attract a new customer than retain what. But, ultimately we know that if we can reduce churn, we're going to be better off when we start counting the dollars again, that if we have more of the same customers, we're going to start at a different starting point. And then if you think about it, what other costs does this improvement save? I mean, you can think about improves acquisition costs. You don't have to acquire them. You don't have to train them again. If you're in, like my business, we're software. If we have to bring someone on new, we're putting a bunch of resources to training, helping them understand, doing workshops and things of that nature to be able to help them be a better customer and ultimately retain them for longer. But those are some of the costs that you have to think about it. So I'm going to do this really quick, talking about connecting the metrics. This is one of those, if you looked at these metrics on the left, these are pretty much common customer experience metrics, CSAT, customer effort score, NPS. And if you were going to tag them to one on the right that's the best fit, what do you think it is? Oh, just someone shout out, what do you think the best metric is for CSAT? What business lever does it move the most? Retention. How about customer effort score? Lower cost of service. And then I guess that means NPS ties into increased revenue. I mean, there are a lot of business levers that we should consider, as well as CX metrics. When we start talking referrals, repeat purchases, cross purchases, cost of service, word of mouth, there's so many metrics that we can move, but it really ultimately takes us to move them. And that's where you start justifying your ROI is what metrics are you going to move. I mean, I've heard it so many times before. I brought it up as an example yesterday. Oh, I just want an NPS program. Well, what are you going to do with it? I will say, even though I'm in that business, I will say, if you come to me and say, I want an NPS program, I really don't want to work with you because that's not the goal. The goal isn't to get an NPS. The goal is to improve the experience. So we're going to get your phones ready again. Talk about going from data to action. And let's see if I can start this successfully here. You're going to get about a minute to answer a series of questions. There are no right or wrongs. This is just all about your opinion. So if we can get you to log in. And I'm going to say these questions out loud, and then you'll get a chance to look at them on your phone. Data is the voice of the customer. The best way to improve business results is through coding of open-end questions. A great dashboard turns complex data into a clear story. A dashboard is a prerequisite for improving the customer experience. If you're not measuring NPS, you're not measuring the customer experience. You must map customer journey before you start measuring the customer experience. Customer surveys should sit at the center of understanding your customer experience. All right. Start the poll. You'll have about a minute to answer all these questions here. If you disagree with it, swipe left. If you agree with it, swipe right. You can still go to QuestionPro.io and then put in that pin if you want on your phone. You might have missed that early part where I said, yeah, if we're going to use our phones.
I did. I also meant for the back to
Got about 5 seconds left. All right. Sorry that it finished so quickly on you there, but data is the voice of the customer. We sort of have a split. I want someone who agrees and someone who disagrees to just throw up their hand and tell me why. Anyone? What did you say?
I said I agree because simply because the data that we get from a customer post-delivered or an interaction, put it that way, that indicates how they experienced it, what frustrations they experienced, or how well they experienced it. So that level of data allows you to kind of plan up, give you a plan of action and what to fix, what to improve on, and what to do more of.
Yeah. Someone that disagreed.
I disagree. I said that sometimes you just agree, just close the thing and ignore it and won't give feedback at all.
Yeah. And that's one of those things where I say, hey, if you're going to ignore the data, if you're going to ignore the feedback, don't measure it. And there's no right or wrong answers on this. I mean, as you can see, there's sort of a split on a lot of these. The best way to improve business results is great coding of open-end questions. Someone who disagreed, let me hear your voice. Anyone? I mean, I would put myself in that camp of disagree. I mean, you can code open-end questions and it can support actions, but too often I think companies try to code those open ends and they just try to make them into another score. They make them into another data point. I mean, that's the worst thing in the world you can do for me. Those are supposed to add context. Those are supposed to tell you, hey, this is the real what's happened. Especially if you're a CX manager and you're not in the store day to day, just relying on those and making them, hey, I'm going to, look at the codes and then I'm going to classify the codes and then I'm going to issue a report on what codes we had, whether it's AI, whether it's manual code, it doesn't matter. You're not going to take action on it. It's not really worth it. I think this next one, everyone answered pretty one-directional, so we'll go to the next one and say, a dashboard is a prerequisite for improving the customer experience. For someone that said they agree with that, can you tell me why? No one's gonna speak up. Hey, there's no right or wrong answers here. These are all opinions. So, how about on the next one? We have. Let me scroll down here. We have. If you're not measuring NPS, you're not measuring the customer experience. For someone that agreed with that, anyone want to explain?
I didn't agree.
You didn't agree. Why would you say you didn't agree?
Because NPS is, we need to say, an indicator of the overall perception that customers have
from a loyalty perspective. You have to have subsets of other metrics that are driving or that are providing the driver and regression analysis that you need to understand exactly what to fix and what is going wrong or right with your business. So NPS is not the overall metric to determine your customer experience in your business. It has to be supported by other key metrics that actually are your core metrics in your business. So that's why I disagree.
Okay. And I agree with you completely, and I also disagree with the question too. And that's why I said you don't have to be right, or there's no right or wrong on these. Yeah, because if you're not measuring anything, you can't improve it. If you don't know, I mean, and NPS is more of just an example. I mean, it could be CSAT, it could be, but if you're not measuring it, then there's no way to know if you're improving it.
So maybe just another point in my mind, or as also an entrepreneur as well. Why measure something if it's not going to tell you where to improve your business?
Exactly.
Because we are in business for growth and profitability and revenue. So it has to make sense in terms of your core business.
Mm-hmm.
So you could measure something you could measure NPS, but if it's having the impact you need, then you measure it. There's no wrong or right answers to your point.
Exactly. And then sometimes, if your business is mass scale, there's a different approach than if your business has 10 customers. And you might still send out a survey that just says, hey, tell me your overall satisfaction. But you're going to get the feedback from the project teams that manage that, everything like that. I mean, we have, in our company, we have CSMs, and they are on the pulse of everything. They can tell me a week in advance if someone's going to complain about something because they already know what's going on. They see it there. Let's look at the last one real quick. Most frontline teams are starved for tools that allow them to analyze data using sophisticated analytics. Anyone that agreed with that, willing to tell me why? Anyone that disagreed with that, willing to tell me why? Because I could sit on both sides of that fence. I mean, most frontline teams aren't really looking for sophisticated data analytics, but they're starved for analytics. They're starved for something that tells them, what am I supposed to do today? So hopefully you enjoyed those polls. Let me flip over here. And I could probably talk all day about the pros and cons of each aspect and each one of those elements. But I really want to talk about building ROI on for CX cases. Really, when we start talking about investment, it's really easy to start building an ROI. There are so many models, and I'll show you some bad examples, some good examples. But really, it's the simple formula. Investment cost, opportunity cost is your investment. Revenue uplift and cost savings is your return. And then there is the, ROI, which is your total return minus total investment divided by total investment. Very easy formula. I don't think anyone really disagrees with that formula. If you do, it's fine. I mean, I know there's a lot of underlying things in there. But what we're going to think about is, I had to do this. This was my first job in entering the CX space. I was working with a specialty goods company. They wanted to invest almost 10 million rand in a CX program. And we had to show results right away. We had 3 months to show results or we were going to be nixed. So over the course of that time, we collected all these transactions. We found out there are 200,000 transactions in every store on average, and that nearly 20% left the store. Now, mind you, these are people that already bought something, and they left the store without buying something they wanted. So that doesn't even include the people that, hey, I came in for one thing, you didn't have it, so I left. And then we were able to get an average price per item. All of this was in their sales database, so it was pretty easy to ascertain it. And then we basically took that 20% and said, that actually represents 9.5 million rand right there for just one store. They had over 150 stores at the time. So do you think that would have been a good investment to find out, hey, that's easy, because when we multiplied it just by 150 stores and we divided it by 3 just to say, hey, 2/3 of this isn't controllable. 2/3 of it is manufacturers not getting stock to us, whatever it is. But if 1/3 of it's controllable because, hey, we don't have the people in the store to get it on the shelf, we're doing something wrong with shipping it and getting it to the stores, anything like that, it amounted to such a huge amount. The CEO was just like, all right. I remember the line. The CEO said, where do I sign? And his COO said, can we get a proposal first? So I was ready to raise the price on them, but that's all right. We had a really good run with them. They were still one of my clients when I left that company. They're amazing to work with and a lot of fun to work with. So we're going to do a little mini hackathon. We have about 15 minutes to do it, so just group up with the people that are right there in your row. We have an example. We're a fictional company. We're going to invest 3.5 million Rand in a new mobile app that promises to improve customer experience by 10%. So write up a quick ROI or business use case. You can make up whatever numbers you want outside of that. You can make up whatever numbers you want for the company revenues, how much each customer is worth, whatever. But take 15 minutes and just group together with your row and get started on that. If you need a notebook, we have some extra notebooks sitting around.
I think some of the gifts that they left us to ask them to repeat it again.
Maybe they can come back to that
All right, in about 3 minutes, I'm going to ask you to tell me your percentage of return. If you have to answer or if you don't do it, you don't do it.
I mean, right there, you already talked about unsatisfied customers not being
All right. We will stay sort of in your groups if you want. Get one of you on the back side who's going to present.
One more minute, guys. All right.
Let's wrap this up. I want one team to come up and present their ROI, good, bad, or otherwise. I saw some that were using calculators, so I love that because that means you're actually computing. Why don't you all come up, present your use case, talk about the notes just briefly, just give everyone a description of what you put into your ROI model, why it worked, why it didn't work. Who's going to represent your group?
We'll all come.
All right.
I would like everyone to sign an NDA, please.
We'll have them on the door on the way out. You know, just...
And we've patented the idea, so please don't steal it.
No, it's fine. Finance committee is waiting to hear it.
Okay, I'm not asking Ashley to go. I don't want to be biased. Okay, so we're an insurance company, and we're focusing on short-term insurance, where we've got a high-churn product, which means high cancellation rates. So we currently have a customer base of 1 million customers, and they are all using our app. However, we've identified 3 major pain points. So one for our quadruple. So we've got competitive rates in the market for this type of insurance, poor post-sale service, and then also looking at the new age customer and different lifestyles that we need to be able to cater to. So, that's our formula. So we said we need an investment of 10 million, but we've broken it up over 3 years, which would give us like 3.3 million over the 3 years. And this app is to be tailored, to self-service capability for the customers. But the differentiator is that it must be backed up with an aggregator model. So we as the company are able to identify firsthand our competitors' rating. So automatically we can come in and provide the customer with the best rate. I suppose the autonomy in decision making, allowing us to beat the price, at least to beat the price, and then reducing our churn rate by 1%. And already if we reduce the churn rate in the first year, by 1%, because we've identified that our cancellation rate is like at a 10%, right? Which at an average premium of 2,500 rand is about 250 million. That's quite a large sum. So obviously, if we go to board or to the CFOs and say we're reducing the churn by 1%, the premium will also drop. There's no way that they are going to not give us the investment that we are looking for, because over the 3 years we've pitched it at 3.3 million, which means we're giving them back to 2.5 million already. So this investment is paying for itself, or this training is paying for itself. So we will get the investment.
Would you invest?
So very colorful.
Thank you for that. A little.
What was the biggest challenge when you were putting this together?
The biggest challenge together.
For any of you, shout out. What was it that? Yeah.
Coming up with realistic numbers.
Yeah, that sometimes. And when you look at this scenario here, I mean, that was probably the biggest thing that we had to convince them of. I mean, we took real numbers from their database, real numbers from their records and transactions, and they still looked at it and they were shaking their head, because we were talking somewhere in the area of 1.2 billion in rand that they were going to get back in 1 year by doing this. And that was just assuming 1/3 was controllable. So it was, I mean, to them, they were just like, these numbers can't be real, and yet they can. When we start talking about future-proofing the strategy, they were talking about a 3-year scenario, and that's something that you're going to have to look into every time. They're going to say, oh, that's great for this year. What about next year? If you have an app, you're going to have to update that app. You're going to have to put some programming behind it. The new hack that's come out, someone's doing bugs and, putting viruses onto apps, things like that. So when you start thinking, is your strategy aligned with the company strategy? I mean, that's probably the big question. But also, does it hit the 3-year business goals? Does it help hit that? I mean, if you're getting a 1% ROI and the company's growth is 12%, then maybe you got to look back and see how those numbers can be improved. Are your metrics changing as customers' needs change? That can be CX metrics, that can be internal KPIs, any of those things. I frequently jump all over average handle time as like the worst customer experience metric, but it's probably one of the best operational metrics, because if you reduce average handle time in a call center, you're saving a lot of money. You're putting fewer teams on the front line. And then, ask yourself, is CX part of everyone's job, not just one department? I mentioned this yesterday. I mentioned it. I mean, I think it was mentioned in the first session. I've mentioned it 2 times. I'm going to mention it the 3rd time. It's not just one department's job. You don't have a customer care department or a CX department. It's got to be everyone's job. It's across there. And then what I thought was brilliant, they referenced the personas. They were talking about the types of customers that they're catering to. And, when you start talking about journey maps, things like that, that's one of those things that I say is the starting point. A lot of people talk about the 5 stages and understanding, where the touch points are. And I'm like, you need to know your personas. If you don't understand your customer enough to define them in different ways, then you're probably not going to do a great job even measuring them, surveying them, whatever it is. And then, do you have gaps? We talked about CSAT, NPS, and CES as 3 different measurements. It's great that, you can look at something like NPS and say, I can, standardize this across the company, but you shouldn't standardize a contact center survey with NPS. It's not the right metric for it. I'll argue all day on that one because they're already calling you because there has been a breakdown somewhere along the lines. Unless you're, dedicated to being, personal contact and everything like that. Chances are, if I'm calling the company, that means the service is broken down. I've tried chat. I've tried email. I've tried just about anything I can do to get through to you. And now I have to get on a phone call and do that. So, and then the action side of it. Do your surveys lead to actions? Does your program that you're putting together for an ROI lead to actions? Does it have an ROI? And, are your customers part of the 11% or the 89%? I mean, think about that one. Are they in that 11% that say, the companies I work with do a great job, or are they part of the 89% that go, no? So, this is an obscure movie quote, at least I know it. There's a movie called Office Space. If you've never seen it, it's great. It's about office life and politics and everything like that. And then the consultants say, what would you say you do here? And that's really a great question to ask yourself on a daily basis. Even though it's said in this movie, you're going to be asked to justify spending your role over and over again. They could present this tomorrow to CEO, and the CEO would go, great, let's get started. And then 2 weeks from now, they're going to say, so where are we at? And can we make it, instead of 112%, can we make it 140%? Because that's more in line. You're going to get that over and over again. And, if the score is not moving, if the score is moving, but not revenue, what actions are taken? Hey, it's Wednesday. I'm going to ask you more questions on how can we improve the ROI. It's going to happen. Up here on the right is, I said, if you give us your contact information, we'll send you the presentation. Make sure you get that. And then we're giving away, what are we giving? We're giving a half day CX activation seminar or customer journey mapping seminar for one person in this. So I wanted to talk about some ideas about keeping it fresh, keeping it simple. And some of these things I talked about, sometimes it's easy to find out, if you're missing purchases. How can you justify the ROI on that? How can you build a model? And it's usually pretty easy. We just, in that case that I talked about with the retailer, we just knew what items had already been purchased, what the average purchase amount is, and then found out what the percentage of sales in each department is. And we were able to make an easy justification. Sometimes as simple as, hey, how much are we spending on training? If someone's at risk and they're not at risk, what's going to be the cost if we lose that employee? So this is a cost element of it. So there's a lot of ways to keep it simple. Look at it. This has been around forever. It wasn't me. It was my colleague that actually put this chart together. You can actually just segment. Hey, those people that are in the top 2 buckets or top 3 buckets, what's their spend versus the rest of the company? And you can quickly and easily say, yeah, this doesn't look like a big number, $15.44, but extrapolate that across an entire 200,000 customers. Suddenly you're starting to see big dollars roll in there. So, and then the last thought, all the analysis in the world, all these cool ROIs, all of the data that you analyze and say, here's our drivers, and here's our action drivers, and here's how it ties to revenue, and here's the chi-square core, and here's the Pearson correlations, and Everything else, if you don't act on the information, it's pretty much useless. Customers don't care about your ROI. They don't care about your strategy. They want to know that they have a relationship with a company and that their feedback is actually actioned. So with that, I'll say thank you. And I actually finished on time this time. So I did good. So thank you very much. I appreciate you attending.